over to you, Mike. Thank you very much.
Yeah, so I'll just quickly say who I am, where I'm from, and what I was up to, and then we'll go to screen sharing when I'm talking about what I've tried to do during COVID. But basically, I am old school. I work from sketch pads mostly. I've got ridiculous piles and piles of sketch pads. So we'll see some of these images, which are ones just for the village that I live in. And then I've got different specific sketch pads for different purposes. So the ones you'll see at the end will be very simple kind of line drawings, not high art, not kind of technically mysterious stuff, just sort of diary drawings of bosses. But just to show you, it's just kind of like more and more of these sketch pads. And you'll see later this one, which has been like a life drawing one. So I've been destroying what I sadly consider to be a kind of worthless book. Like, it's not sellable, it's not good to read. But screen share whenever you like, but I'll kind of tell you who I am and where I'm from. So I'm Mike Duckett, obviously. I'm from West Yorkshire, but I don't live there at the minute. I live out in Northumberland in a village called Bardon Mill, but I'm from Edge of Bradford, and I keep kind of going back. So I guess I'm angling to work out if I should go back, because my folks are still there, my sister's Huddersfield, and there's more going on in the valleys and the conurbations of West Yorkshire than there is in Northumberland, and you get more chances to meet a different range of people. Whereas my neighbours, they're fine, but they're of a type, and the conservative countryside is not always the most engaging place to try out new ideas or to receive new input. So although I work normally in Newcastle, I live out in Northumberland, and my work's been off since March. So I've basically been in this cottage, relying on that view out that window and places I can walk to for a bit too long. So Alice, are you okay to screen share now, like the first one? Yes, okay, cool. So this is a maze which locates where I am. So that's the village green. You can't tell because there's a maze over the middle of it. But the top left is a pub and a shop. The top right is two chimneys, which are of a pottery. Then we watch the birds on the green, and then there's those kind of weird squares in the centre of the picture, which are a quoits pitch. So if you don't know quoits, it's a very northern thing, but I don't think it's really a Yorkshire thing. It's North York Moors, and it's bits of Cumbria, especially Northumberland, and it's where traditionally farmers chuck, like, it's basically hoop toss. So you throw a hoop and you try and kind of get them into these clay pits. Normally the sound of the clink of these metal kind of quoits things is what we associate with the sound of summer. And this year in 2020, for the first time ever that I know of, there was no quoits sounds. So the lockdown happened just as that summer season was going to start, and I had one practice game and lockdown came in. But yeah, so my house is labeled top left. And the next, I think there's another slide with the same maze as well. I was basically trying to kind of do drawings and not go completely isolated, kind of head up mad, but try and find ways to share images with my neighbours. So I should have, yeah, so there's the second maze here. So I was trying to draw and I guess communicate with people who are not just me in my house. So this is like the same maze picture continued a little bit to the south, and there's a big bridge to the bottom right, and there's a railway that you kind of pass through, and there's sewage works. And these are all the landmarks that we recognise locally. So I just shared these on the local Facebook group, and a few people kind of downloaded them and could share them with their kids or whatever. People kind of trying to make things for each other, like virtually, and it's when everyone was painting rainbows in the windows and stuff. So this is my little attempt to use my drawing to kind of share. And that kind of locates where I am. So there's a river, there's a railway, there's the sound of the train. We actually got so lonely, we were waving at the train going past for a while. And there was no passengers on it. We were counting passengers, and there was normally 0 passengers and just the staff. And occasionally there was 1 passenger, and on special days there was 2 passengers on these trains during the COVID period. And next slide, I was doing other drawings of the village as well. So you probably skip through a couple of these. I don't know how many there are. The art style is pretty simple and black and white. It's just like pen on paper. That particular pad was a special one that I bought in Shipley off some guy, I forget his name now, who makes, he kind of uses old kind of retro bits of paper like leftover stock from the 70s and kind of rebinds pads with them. So it's one that I bought one Christmas for myself, and I finally broke it open, and I filled the whole thing from March till summer. And if you click through it, that's obviously a war memorial kind of in the background. I began this one. So next slides. We'll see what the next image is of. It normally it fires up on Wednesday, and then it kind of they collect the pots from inside the furnace on Saturday. There's sheep in that field behind. There's a basel, which is a fortified castle behind it. That's just over the river. So next slide again. So just drawing simple things. And my question is always what to do with these drawings that I've done, because although I'm not particularly productive in the sense of an artist who produces professional stuff on demand, I am prolific, so I'm constantly drawing. And I don't know how to share it really. I've got no economic model. I've no idea how to make money out of art, and so I don't really try to. I just do part-time jobs. But then I want to share it anyway. So in this case, that's me sticking 2 pictures onto 1 piece of paper, and I've sent them to footprint printers in Leeds, and they're going slow because they've got like a backlog of work and not enough kind of contact time with their machinery. But they're going to print that on a risograph. I'm told they've printed it and just need to staple it. And because I've been squeezing it onto 1 piece of paper, they've only got space for 1 staple on each one. But it basically makes that artwork, which will be a little booklet of very simple line drawings of Bardham Mill. I reckon I'll be able to get each booklet, I'll get 500 of them printed, and of the 500, each one will only cost about £1 to print, so £1 or something to print, which is really cheap. It might even be down to 80p. So I've kind of made the production of the arts as cheap as possible. And in theory, I kind of contacted local organisations like the Parent Teachers Association and the nursery and some events people, asking would like them as like winter fundraisers, like whether it's raising for Christmas events or whatever it is. So I'm hoping that the outlets we have in the area will have a little stack of these in a little box on their counters, and somebody else, not me, will go and collect some money for them, and it might give something back to the village. And for me, I mean, people have seen my drawings and I'll know someone else is looking at their houses. Some folks have like recognized their houses and they're very, very happy with it. So in terms of like the satisfaction of producing art to share by printing them as cheap as I can, by fiddling with like the format and doing it on cheap risograph, I get a lot more satisfaction than if it was done just in my own pads or on paper that basically ends up going in the recycling. So next slides, let's see what's next. It's probably just a simple example of one of the pages. So there you go, dead simple. It's not the kind of image that you would like strike you as the most scenic, tourist heavy, kind of like this is what to come and visit in Bardham Mill. It's just some houses, but I quite like that on page 38 I've drawn some people's houses, and it means those random people might now see their world depicted in my quick kind of black and white pen style, which gives me a lot of satisfaction. So next slide. I'll do a contrast now. So it's the same style of artwork, but it's from before the COVID lockdown. So this is sort of like the style that I did do before COVID. So it's random badges and things. That's like an in-joke with the group. But basically, I'm sitting with a group of friends in a public place in the city, and we're drawing and talking, and we're doing little drawing challenges. The group happens to be a comics collective. So a mix of people like comic fans, comic makers, a mixture of ages, mixture of abilities, and various other things. And it's an open group, there's no cost. We just hire a room. If not enough of us turn up to the room, we go downstairs and sit in the corner of a pub or a cafe or whatever. So that was what I used to do until COVID lockdown. And so the habit of drawing I've continued, which is to my drawing pads. And then I guess the effort and the extra thing to do is to try and find a way to share it, hence the printing. So the next picture, please. I think there'll be a different style of drawing now. Yeah, so random, this is me, this is the bike. When I was no longer allowed to go on the trains and we have no car, I needed to get to the shop or to somewhere to kind of get things from the nearest proper town, the nearest market town. So I bought a bike online. And by the time it arrived, I was able to get to the nearest place called Port Whistle, and there was a bike box. So I've been using Zoom purely as a participant, never as someone talking, but I do Zoom for online life drawing, and I found a really nice community of people based on groups that I used to actually go to in real life. So there's I forget the model's name, but this is me trying to use, Tipex and big bits of ink and drawing a clothed model on my bike box. So that's the remains of what the bike arrived in, and it's bigger than me. So it's like it's now become part of the compost heap. But for a brief period, we had a wall filled with these random life drawings. And the next page, the next slide, will show the more normal sized ones. So again, yeah, this is like a nude figure, but you see that's on page 286. So I've almost finished that book now. Go to the next slide if you like. It's a picture that I quite like. I mean, it's of my drawing, it's one of the better examples, done quick from an online life model. And I filled, yeah, basically 300 pages full of these. Right, this is what I want to talk about. So this is one of the pads I showed you earlier. It's like just drawings of boffies. This is sort of a diary page. So it's, again, it's me sitting with my black pen on a white page, starting to draw a story, and then like using it as a diary, and then using it as a motivation to go off on my own. And this actual image is from a year ago when I started the project, and I went off a bit ill. And near our house, there's Hadrian's Wall, and on the other side of Hadrian's Wall, the old side that the Romans never really controlled so much, it's much wilder in the sense that there's no towns really, there's farms and that's kind of it. And then there's the big Kielder forest, and there's nothing until Scotland really. There's no kind of villages really. There's some small forest villages which are built for the plantation workers, but it's very wild. And then on the other side of Hadrian's Wall, there's also bothies. So bothies are what I'm going to talk about now. And I noticed a label on there, the train line and the river and Bowden Mill again, because all of my pages are always maps as well, because it's me thinking about who am I, where am I, what have I seen today, where am I going to go next? So I use them to plan with as well. So go to the next slide. We'll focus on the boffies for the last little bit of this. Yeah, so this is an example of what's going to turn up in a bothy zine. So I've always been really into zines. I go to zine fairs all the time. I go to them in York, Leeds, Newcastle when they manage them, Edinburgh, Manchester, Nottingham, where else? Oh, Todmorden. Wherever manages to organise enough interested people who are making their own self-published papery artifacts, and a zine fair happens, I will normally turn up. And I don't generally sell zines myself. Zines, if you're not sure of it, is just, it's like the phrase for a cheap, or at least it should be cheap, self-produced papery artifact. So it's not quite a book, it's not quite a magazine, it's something normally photocopied with staples. Nowadays it's often quite artistically done with people with training, using risographs and screen prints, and often charging quite a lot of money for them. I'm definitely the old school 1980s style of zine, which traditionally you would just stay late at the office and use a photocopier. I don't have a photocopier, so I use footprint in Leeds, or I use printers in Newcastle. And basically, my style of just black line on white paper is good for cheap, economical printing. I was thinking about doing it 2 colours, but I chose against it. And the zine has to be visually interesting enough to pick it up, and it also has to have enough of a story to be interesting enough to read it, which is maybe a struggle, because like it's not like writing a novel or writing a poem where you begin in one day and you focus on it and nothing else, and you kind of like come back to it, and you kind of rework the words and you make it kind of concise and tight and flowing. The way that I do these is basically a diary. So one page could be written 6 months later than the one before. So the page you saw earlier, that snowy image with a map on it, I set off and visited my nearest bothy. Then I got flu, and I kind of went off going to bothies, and I had like a few months off, and then I restarted at the start of 2020. So this one here, that was also 2019. That was my last picture before flu. In fact, that's a cheat. I say at the bottom how it's a cheat because no, I'm misreading. Anyway, basically I drew from a photo for that one. The principle of my zines is that I go somewhere and I draw what I see. So I'll go to an event and I'll draw the people that I see. I'll get them to draw me back. I'll try and make it an activity. Without people being allowed in 2020, I've just gone out and walked to the bothies that are near me. There's bothies. I'll need to explain the bothy, don't I? Like basically, there's about 12 or 13 of them in Northumberland. There's another 4 in the Lake District. There's no other ones in England. There's about maybe 10 or 12 in Wales, and then there's about 100 and something in Scotland. A bothy is just a name for a small old building that was traditionally used by a crofter, a shepherd, maybe a woodsman. So maybe someone kind of like was using it for seasonal work, and it was very low mod cons. So there's not traditionally toilets, but there is one here on the left, because now some of these bothies are run by an organisation called the Mountain Bothy Association, who some people complain about as being the ones who control them all, but I kind of love them. It's mostly 60-year-old white men who like going walking up hills. but they've sort of found a way to add a real contribution to society as well as their passion. So they tend to be quite good at fixing roofs, they tend to be quite good at fixing stoves, and they basically maintain these buildings for no money for anyone to use. So the door is always open. During COVID, the boffies have been officially shut, but the doors are still open. So let's go to the next slide and see which one turns up there, because this has made it quite interesting, because the people who maintain the boffies are not going to go to them. The people who visit them and stay in them, it's kind of like indoor camping. They're not meant to go and camp there inside, and yet the door's open. So obviously some people are doing. So it basically means the boffies are still available to those who want to use them, but there's no one actively maintaining them in the same way. So I've kind of tried to make myself useful by going to visit the local one. So Horton Green is our local one. It's actually within our parish boundary, but that's about a 3-hour walk away over the Hadrian's Wall on a bit of the Pennine Way. And by bike, I can get to within a binocular view of it within 20 minutes, but then it's like a long, boggy way to get to it. The guy who looks after it is based in North Yorkshire, and he's not allowed to go. So I was kind of going there and carrying out litter, because people would go there and have a party. They'd go and escape the city. They'd leave all their fizzy pop and their alcohol and whatever. Sometimes you get a poo in a bag. Sometimes you get kind of nasty stuff left. And so because the regular maintainers have not been looking after them, I've been looking after this one. The words on this page incidentally are from before COVID. It's again from that, the times that I would visit them beforehand. Let's get to the next slide. There's just 2 or 3 of them left, and I'll give you some contrasting ones. Oh, the map follows. Oh no, ask this one. This is Horton Green from the outside. So that's my drawing in front of the building. You see, it's solid, it's stone, it's got a roof on it, it's got a water butt, it's got a spade. You can use the toilet. Traditionally, you would go and dig a hole for your poo, but now they've built a special toilet there. And it's the one nearest us. It's the one also nearest to lots of visitors, and it tends to get trashed quite a lot. People tend to party there quite a lot, and there's drugs and there's other stuff. And so those who turn up and look after it properly have more work to do. The best ones are really the ones that are miles off a road and you can't walk to them carrying fizzy pop. And you have to really be a hill walker and someone who really loves the outdoors to go to. But let's go to the map, the next slide. I can't control the cursor to point them out, but like you'll recognize the more northern part of northern England. So you guys are just below here, the area of the cities that I'm thinking about going back to. This is the most rural part of the north of England. So you have on the left, on my left of the picture, there's 4 are in the Lake District. There's 2 next to each other, which I visited on Monday of last week to draw for the zine. The other 2 in the lakes I've not had a chance to visit yet because we weren't meant to travel out of the northeast. I'm now going to go on Friday and visit the one at the bottom, but the one at the north I'm going to have to put off a little bit. And the little cluster of them towards the north, that's like the ones in Kielder Forest. So the one where there's a road, there's a line that goes between Carlisle and Newcastle. That's basically what I live near. It's the Tyne Gap. It's where the rail link goes and where the Tyne River goes. It's the main conduit of communications across the country. And our bit to the north of it, it's great dark skies. There's not many folks live there. It's great camping. And there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 in close proximity. I've got one to visit that I'm going to visit on Friday, but it's been one that I've not been able to get to because of COVID. So COVID means you can't use the bus or train unless you've got a good reason. Just visiting a bothy is not a good reason. We did cycle. We cycled all the way to that top one, which is right on the Scottish border. It took a long time. It was exhausting. And when we cycled them to visit them, I couldn't visit one of the ones in the middle of that Kielder cluster because there was ospreys nesting just next door to it. And these migratory ospreys, which are there from like May to September, are protected birds. If you stay in the bothy and get the fire going, you're going to scare them off. So we were not allowed to visit it then. Then the COVID restrictions came, and I've got one still to get to, and it's really, really annoying. So I basically begged one friend with the car to come out of the city, and she's going to drive us there. She's going to walk her dog, and I'm going to draw the bothy. And then I'll get them almost all done by Saturday. And the reason I was aiming for Saturday is because that should be the AGM of the Mountain Bothies Association. So 10th of October is they'll hire out a village hall or a youth hostel or something, somewhere in a wild-ish area, but not so hard to get to. So it's due to be in Langwathby, which is on the Settle Carlisle line, which is what I normally come down to Bradford and Shipley on. And it's been cancelled for COVID. So it's annoying for me because I make paper things. I want to get these kind of boffy zines, these kind of paper versions of my drawings printed cheaply into the hands of people who can then distribute them into places that random strangers will pick them up. I don't need money back for them. I don't care about that. I've never succeeded in making money out of my drawings. So I just kind of write that off and I accept that maybe like 15% of my wage of the month will go on printing and go on the efforts of making stuff happen. But what I can't do is get the boffy zines out into all those Scottish boffies or the Welsh boffies. So I'm stumped. There's no AGM. There's no gathering of the maintenance organisers, the guys who look after the boffies. So instead, what I'm going to have to do is deliver them myself. So I'm going to have to visit them not just once to draw them and get the drawings printed and get the drawings into a zine. I'm going to have to now get my bike out and I'm going to have to cycle to the Scottish border. I'll buy some panniers. I'll get a rucksack. I'll have to take a sleeping bag probably because I'm not going to be able to make it all in one day. I'm going to have to leave little stacks of 5 or 10 of these zines in each of those boffies. So the next random person who turns up can pick them up and they're free. And they're just like a little gesture of shared appreciation of these boffies for those of us who found them and can get to them. Go to the next slide and I'll just tell you my last bit of story about my last visit. I was 2 slides, that's good. Yeah, so this is the last of the local ones. This was me testing the boundaries of what you're allowed to do under COVID. So it's like, because I was maintaining the Horton Green boffy near me, I sort of persuaded them that I was a temporary person looking after it and therefore it was essential work for me to go and stay over there. That meant I could stay over there one day with permission from the Mountain Boffy Association, and then I could walk to this next one. So you can kind of walk from one to the next in one full day. But I got to this one it's just called Green, with my transistor radio, and found the fire, and it's really beautiful, really looked after. But the guy who looked after that one lives quite local, and he put a big boffy closed sign onto it, and it made it far more psychologically. It felt much like not a place I was allowed to stay in. So I couldn't stay there and go to the next one on foot. I just stayed there, drew some stuff for a little bit, and then I kind of walked all the way back to the one that I'd sort of got implicit permission for. And yeah, so to get the ones further north, I need to wait until we're allowed to go and visit them officially as visitors. But I had, tins of soup. I kind of had to leave them behind in a little boffy box. I had to leave like an apologetic note saying I came to visit and drew it, but I didn't stay over. But yeah, COVID has hampered as well as encouraged this as a project. It's encouraged it because it's got me out of the house. I'm absolutely sick of our village green. I'm absolutely sick of my neighbours' faces. They're nice, but I just don't want to see their faces anymore. It's been 6 months of their faces. I know their routines. I know at 5 o'clock who comes in the morning to place the papers in the box. I know what times the trains come. So I need somewhere else to get to. And without a car and without public transport, some of my nearest places I could get to with the boffies. So they encouraged it in that way. But then I was also discouraged and told, no, you're not allowed to stay. And let's get to that last slide. I've no idea about timings. Sorry if I've been going too fast or waffling too much. But this was our little window. Everyone had a window. We had a window of like being allowed to go places and not feeling guilty. So this is more your classic bossy view. It's not in Northumberland. It's not in England. It's somewhere on the Cape Wrath Trail, so high northwest coast of Scotland, and you can't get there by car. You have to kind of walk in for about half a day, and there's some famous hills around. And you kind of see the location of it. They're really your imagination starts to really want to go back to boffies once you've been to one or two of them. And obviously, if you're allowed to stay there, if you can get the stove going, if you meet some new people there, and if they're kind of young and fit and they're doing an adventure and they're carrying all their stuff and they're from, well, we meet people there. So we met people there. We stayed there briefly, and we had tents as well. And we walked 3 days on the Cape Wrath Trail until the next place we get a bus back and get the trains back to England. But there's people that walk in there from Germany. There's people walking there from, I've forgotten now, somewhere in the north of England, maybe Preston or something. And someone walking from the north, someone walking from the south, they meet in the boffy. Everyone knows we're not allowed to be there. Everyone could be sharing COVID. It's all kind of under the radar. But the assumption is if you made it there, you're going to be fit enough. So like we reluctantly left these people there, but we're like, oh, it's like this boffy world, this social world of people kind of like still going out and ignoring civilization, ignoring the illnesses of civilization as well, is still existing. And I guess I wanted them to see my drawings. I wanted them to pick up my drawings and like have that as part of their input. I drew them at the time when they were there. but instead we kind of moved on and they stayed there. And basically I'm really intrigued by who is staying in the boffies tonight, because officially no one, officially they're all closed and the maintenance organisers cannot go. But when I visited the last one in Northumberland that I did, which was a bus journey and then like a 3-hour walk and a 3-hour back to the bus and the bus back down and then actually another train to get to my house, there was a guy living there who's been made homeless. So there's a guy who was working cash in hand on one of the many precarious jobs that people live by. He gave up his council flat in order to, I think, to keep a bit of the housing benefit. Don't really know the story, but basically he got a bit of kind of cash instead of the home, and he had a rundown van. He found another van available for 400 quid. He went to buy it. The guy sold it to him. He drove off with it. The police stopped him, saying it was a dodgy van. Compounded this new van of his, and he's basically found himself with this kind of like this crooked, not really roadworthy old van. No home, no base, no job. And so where does he go? He could admit defeat and go beg somewhere, but he doesn't. He goes to the countryside and he stays in boffies for maybe 3 nights in one. Then he kind of walks and drives and walks and stays another one for 3 nights and the next one. And I don't know, I kind of found it somehow reassuring that people are still having adventurous 2020s, not necessarily for choice and not necessarily in the best situation, but they still have like, we're not all glued to screens. We're not all just accepting that it's Zoom chat and nothing else. So I guess by me celebrating the boffies, by going back to visit them, I'm really feeling that I'm still connecting myself to that world of people who still kind of go outside and live without electric light and without artificial stimulus. And yeah, maybe I'll stop there. Maybe stop screen sharing and we'll see where we are with time. That's a bit of a passionate ending to my little tale. I'm just seeing a little grey figure. I don't know if you guys see me or not.
Yeah, we'll see you.
I see
I
hands
got
up.
mine on gallery view and it's not given us a countdown
Cool.
time yet. So that was brilliant and so inspiring. Thanks so much. Does anybody want to kick off with any questions?
Well, thanks for having me.
Oh, yeah, my pleasure.
Yeah, I've got a question. So the drawings that you showed are they like your first initial sketches of the drawing, or did you have a few attempts for each one first?
I go straight in. So yeah, in all my kind of drawings, I don't use a pencil. I don't plan. I'm not saying this is good advice or anything. I produce what I produce, and I accept it. So the reason I'm printing these as booklets and cheap, small booklets is because none of the works really stand up to careful scrutiny. But what they hopefully do is give a gist and like enough to tell the story. So yeah, I produce better drawings if I, measure and work from a photo and come back to it. But this is the one where I met the lad who was like temporarily homeless. It's a very simple drawing, but I can make it while I'm having a chat with somebody. So that was me kind of squatting outside on a bit of grass, drawing the boffi. And I think it's sort of suitable for what they are as well, because a boffi is not massively complicated. You can make a really nice drawing out of them, a very nice painting out of them, a really nice textured, kind of like all of the cracks in the stones, kind of like drawing out of them. But they're basically a house shape, a child's house shape. And so yeah, so I just go straight onto the page. I do the same with me, or any kind of drawings I do. I just go straight in and live with the result. That's a model called Tris. That's a model in Newcastle. So Denton, if you're in Newcastle and want to join an online one with Geordie accents, there's people making them there. That's a model called Heather. I generally go in with ones which are run by people themselves rather than by, I don't know, yeah. So I go straight in there.
Cool.
And the last thing to show actually, this is the Boffizine I made last time. I didn't mention that the Boffizine is Boffizine 2, because in 2009 I made one already, and it's more of like a story of how I got to them, but there are some drawings of Boffies in there. And it turned out to be quite popular. So I printed maybe 250 or something I got printed. And again, they were cheap, but they ran out. That's my self-drawn, my self-image at the time. It was mostly a tale of misadventure and exhaustion. And the one that's coming out this year there's no exhaustion, there's no misadventure, because it's just day trips, or it's me trying to get there, and it's like the stories about it's hard to get to Bothish because I can't stay there, not really allowed to stay. So I think it's less exciting, this Bothy zine, but the drawings have improved. Practice has improved the drawings. So I waffled on different answers there.
When you were talking about leaving your zines in places, it just reminded me of Robin Wilson's practice. I don't know if you know her work.
I guess Robin
Woolston. She lives in the Highlands now, and I don't know whether she defines it as part of her art practice or not, but she's got a honesty box where she kind of puts like homemade preserves and eggs from her chickens. And she's really interested in starting a dialogue with people that come. She's really, really remote, so she'll get people that have been walking for days in the snow, and she puts them up. And it kind of just reminded me, like when you were talking about these bodies offering shelter and stuff, and then this kind of like introducing this artistic element of leaving your zines places, it kind of reminded me of a work. So I just wanted to kind of mention. I thought it was a nice connection. Maybe like I should introduce you to some like potential collaboration or something. But yeah.
Yeah, put us in touch, because I mean, the whole thing about rural areas where there's distances between people is you often have to leave something for the next person, because you're not seeing each other, are you? You're not face to face. So even though I've been denied the city and stuff, in theory, there's a way that there's more chance of sharing stuff in rural, remote areas than there is in the city, because you can't leave, these free books on benches in the city. They sort of work to a degree, but you can't leave something more ephemeral and have it picked up later. Whereas I guess you can, you get free little shelves, don't you? You have like honesty boxes for eggs. 6 of our neighbours will sell eggs. Like occasionally go around on a bike looking for them. There's never any eggs. But in theory, they're all kind of like giving out their chickens eggs in an honesty box. And one or two people have done yard sales as well, where they've just like, where they've got like a bit of an awning under their gate or something. They've like left out a table of their unwanted books, unwanted posters and stuff. And I've been going there picking up trinkets and paper to draw on. Yeah, that wouldn't work in the city for so long. Like a yard sale has to be quite limited by time, doesn't it, in the city? Whereas out here, you can sort of establish yourself as I'm the friendly person at the end of it in this cottage. When you walk past, pick up something, which can be lovely. It's quite hard to do actually, but yeah, it can be special. So I'll make a note of her name. It's Robin Woolston.
Yeah, I'll find a website and drop it in the chat. Andrew, did you want to ask a question? I think, did you have your hand up to say something?
Yeah, I think, Mike, I was really looking at your work online, and then you sort of the presentation. I think what I've grasped from it, do you know, like the pen work, I do that as well. What I've grasped is sort of like you're a wandering spirit. I really kind of get that whole idea myself, but I sort of ended up here back home now. But I get the whole idea of what you're saying, and I think for me it adds depth to my character of work. But I just feel like you need that helping hand maybe to kind of sell your work, but why shouldn't it sell? You've got the ideas.
Yeah, but there are other skills involved in that, aren't there? There's other skills involved in making sellable work. So like the old economy that I guess I would buy into a little bit would be these small stall fairs, the zine fairs and small press fairs, and the Bradford one as well I went to. But once you've paid your table fee, you might make your money back. And then to actually make your money back properly, you basically need to get a deal with a publisher. You need to improve the quality of your work in terms of like adding normally a computer element and things that I haven't got. So relying on a pen and paper, I could draw caricatures in the street, or I could do pet portraits, or I could draw that, that kind of thing. That doesn't appeal to me. And you need to be quite good at having a business head on you. So when I make money through art, it's generally from adding something to an event. And in the countryside, there are no events. So like, I guess I do love the idea of kind of contributing to a crowd. So a gathering of people in a shared free space is what I love. And that's what I really miss here, because the village green is a free space, but it's dominated by the same neighbours all the time. It's not the same as going somewhere with, friendly strangers. You're literally maybe like the first group of random friendly faces who I don't know that I spoke to about myself in probably 6 months. you know, my girlfriend knows about me, my family on the phone know about me, folks that I visit, you know, even though I've got quite wide horizons around here, it's quite a very limited circle of people that you bump into. So I think maybe like yourself, I might well end up back in West Yorkshire. And part of the reason I've noticed the Green Clough things and the other events is because I'm just a little bit, I've got a fear of missing out. You guys have got networks of possibility, of funding as well, but also like of connections and other people trying to do stuff. And so yeah, so I'm down to West Yorkshire at least once a month, purely to join in with an event that I like.
Sorry.
No, you go.
That's what happened now, because I remember graduating in 2006 and there was no art kind of careers here. They looked down on your nose, and I got offered a job in a factory. It was that kind of, it's changed now. It wasn't always like this here.
Yeah. I mean, at school, when I went to school not on the edge of Bradford, I did a GCSE in art, and then that was it. Because then, you know, I was headed for university, and I wanted to anyway. So I had to do real training, and I've never quite worked out how to get back into being trained as an adult properly. Obviously, you can join the class, but again, in the countryside, you can't just turn up to an expert in your neighbourhood and learn at their feet, and you can't maybe have the same chance to pick and mix and choose your favourite group. There's a little bit of
I think
university third age stuff.
Yeah, I think just to add to your point, I think the meeting that we were in earlier today with the Same Skies think tank, that really sort of, Susan was saying how you do need another body to go to kind of get your artwork out there, and it's vitally important. I don't know if Andy's there and you can sort of add to that.
You know that
I think I've drawn you from them.
Have you ever heard of Creator Space? That's I've kind of logged into Creator Space, and there's so many opportunities, especially for zine. You know, they're always asking for input for zines. So
there are people making collaborative and collective booklets of some sorts, whether it's, you know, zines or whatever. It's like, I know like Bradford Libraries are going to have one of my pages in there. It's not paid or anything, but it's quite nice to kind of be included in something that one of the local councils has supported. And then up here in Newcastle, I don't know if like Denton maybe applied as well, but there's like the Baltic